At the request of a dance mom, I am actually going to go over her dress and what to look for in future purchases on a dress, specifically a used dress when it most likely will need to be adjusted. And I'm starting with the front. This is a beautiful Connor O'Sullivan dress. Absolutely love it. Has the popular skater sleeves, which, you know, both a plus and a minus. Um, it has a beautiful soft front, you know, very flexible soft front skirt, which is also equally as nice. The first thing is if your dress needs to be brought in, say the hips are too big. The skirts, for the most part, are what they are. The soft skirts are a little bit more easy to, you know, size up and down than if it's a hard solid front. But the general rule is you look at where the side seam is, which is right there, and it's about 1.5 to 2 inches to that first main pleat of the side skirt, or the front skirt right there. So there's, you know, that distance. So that's an easy to be brought in. You could easily bring the skirt over to the side seam. So you can easily bring this particular dress in without any issue. It really won't look any different because it is a soft front. Some of the hard skirts, when you go all the way to the side seam, they'll bow slightly. And sometimes you'll even see where right here in the center they will have a crease. The next thing is depending on the age of the dancer or how big their bust area is. This one, you know, there's a dart right here, but there's no other darts. There's no other darts. For this particular dancer, that one dart line seems to be working just fine. It's sort of nice though that this is designed that we could add a second front dart if needed, just from the way the embroidery pattern is. Sometimes you have an embroidery pattern that's absolutely gorgeous, and once you add the additional darts into it, it just ruins the embroidery visually. And so you just sort of have to make that decision whether you want it to fit it or you want to keep the embroidery. So, but as far as the front, that's all we have there. So let's flip it over. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Okay. Untangle it. Pull out the other sleeve. Fix the skirt. Okay, so this is the back of the dress. And we're sort of giving it the same inspection. It has the V down here, which is very popular right now, especially with no cape. It sort of takes up the space of the cape. It's really, really nice when the hips fit. If the hips don't fit, it actually makes it worse for the skirt to ride up. But if the hips fit and it lays beautifully, I mean, the whole back just sort of pops. So that's really nice. The other little nice thing is that there's a couple little darts on either side where if we needed a little extra on the skirt, we could take it from there if we need to make the hips bigger. And the next thing is we'll flip up the skirt. I'm just sort of doing what I normally do on inspections when parents say what can be done. So we're looking at the front right here. You can see the stitch line for the bodice. You know, you're probably noticing that, oh look, it's separated, you know, something happened. No, nothing happened. Just that when you do these, you stitch the front skirt part first and then you do the sides. Especially on velvet, velvet shifts, it's a pile, and it will move back and forth. So you actually usually stitch a skirt in just smaller increments. Almost every dress, though, is done that way. Some people would look at this and instantly go, oh, look, you know, there's at least 1 inch that we can let this down. There's one hitch to that thought, and it comes right there. And if you think, oh no, something happened to the skirt, guess what? It's on both sides, which means it was done deliberate, and it is done deliberately. It is so that the skirt lays flat and it will settle on your hips. If you keep it tight, it's at an angle, so it's like having a cone, and it may not sit all the way down, and it may rise up a bit. So it just needs to be clipped. Sometimes you'll even see parts of this clipped depending on the shape of the dancer. So the skirts, the length and everything on the physical skirt, that's pretty much the length that you're going to have on the skirt regardless of what you do for everything else. So the next thing we have to look at is, this is the skirt, is we look at the bodice, because that's where any length is going to come from. So we're opening up the seams, and you can see some of the embroidery there, and there's about an inch that we could let this down, so they can get at least an inch. What's funny is that if the dress happens to be tight and riding up, as soon as the hips get fixed, the skirt will just drop, and sometimes it can drop up to about 2 inches. So if it's a really tight dress and it's also short, if it's within an inch or two short, I would not do anything on the length. I would fix the hips first, and then if needed, then fix the length, because a lot of times those two go side by side. The next thing a lot of parents look at is they look at this back zipper. This particular dress does not zip all the way down. A lot of major makers just get a big roll of zipper and then get the pull on it, and there they go, and they just, you know, get what they need. The only issue with that is, you know, it doesn't go all the way to the end. You know, so it doesn't protect the bottom of the skirt quite as nicely, you know, where now you're having to step into it, and it you know, it could possibly be touching the ground or whatnot. But a lot of parents look at the sides of the zipper and go, oh, look, there's all this material. This is good if you have a additional athlete dancer, meaning that they do other athletic events like swimming or basketball, volleyball, anything like that, because then they'll have a bigger, stronger back, and you can take it out of here. You know, so that's really good. But if this is the only let out that you have, that's actually not very good, because most alterations need to be taken place because the child is changing shape, and so you have to go to the inside. And luckily there's a lot of beautiful fabric here. We got at least, you know, an inch or so on either side here, plus an inch or so on the other side. So I mean, potentially 3 to 4 inches in the hips and waist and bust area that could be let out. The only hiccup we have is these beautiful skater sleeves, because when we let this out, it makes the armhole bigger, and you can actually see where it's already pinching right here, because the sleeve was smaller than the armhole. So when we let this out, the armhole is going to get bigger. The problem is with skater sleeves, there's the edge of the seam. There is no where to let out the sleeve, so I guess it needs to be added, which is just a triangular piece of fabric. It'll be in the armpit, so it's hardly noticeable. It'll be a couple inches long, but it's just enough to give the width so that the sleeve fits properly into the garment. And right next to it, you can actually see the dart from the front. This is the front dart. If you feel down here at the base where the embroidery is, the embroidery did continue. They kept the embroidery. It's right there. So that way, you know, it can be let out. So if this gets resold again and goes to a younger dancer, the dart actually can be completely taken out. So that's not an issue. There's also that back dart, which is right here. Again, that could be taken out. So that's good as well. And that can be adjusted. So that makes it really easy. And as you can see, again, there are no interior darts. It's really nice that this one is open seam. Rising Stars looks absolutely gorgeous, but they do what's called bagging a dress, where they don't finish their edges or anything, but they put everything, you know, the liner is actually covering it all up. So it looks very nice. Problem is you can't actually see what's in there. So Rising Stars typically do not leave much room. They're cut rather tight. Usually there's a little bit of room that you can maneuver, but probably not more than about an inch
in any measurement, length, width, any of it. Plus it takes the extra time, you can't even see what is in there. So it's nice that this one has all the exposed seams. Exposed seams are great. And just other few little comments. The collar was stitched on just by a regular machine. After the fact, pretty common. That's all pretty normal. That's just all regular machine stitching. Everything else it's in really good shape. I don't really see much embroidery has an issue. There's a couple little snags, but not much. It looks good.